The protests in Hong Kong before the CCP virus pandemic were about the Extradition Bill. Now, the recent protests organized by the Hong Kong people are about the passing of the Hong Kong version of the national security law by the Chinese Communist Party. This action sparked outrage not only from the Hong Kong people, but also from the international community, and the Hongkongers are taking it up themselves to stand up to the Chinese Communist regime. Let's take a look back at what happened in the past few days.
The Chinese Communist Party's push to pass its national security law in Hong Kong has sparked backlash across Hong Kong society, as tens of thousands of people took to the streets on May 24th to protest. The CCP's rubber stamp parliament, the National People's Congress, however, continued to examine the bill on the morning of May 25th, despite the widespread opposition. More than 380 members across the 18 districts of Hong Kong have signed a joint petition expressing that Hong Kong's national security law will destroy Hong Kong's one country, two systems principle and thus must be withdrawn. In Sino-British Joint Declaration of 1984, the CCP pledged that after Hong Kong was handed back to Chinese sovereignty in 1997, Hong Kong's high degree of autonomy would remain unchanged for 50 years under the one country, two systems framework, with Hong Kong people ruling Hong Kong. The end date for this 50-year period is June 30, 2047. But on the evening of May 21st, Beijing announced that it would deliberate on its anti-secession, anti-subversion law, dubbed the draft decision, to establish and improve a legal framework and enforcement mechanism for safeguarding national security in the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region during the two sessions annual meeting. Once the law is passed, the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, NPCSC, will be empowered to enact the law in Hong Kong territory, bypassing scrutiny by the local legislature by directly inserting the law into Annex 3 of Hong Kong's Basic Law. The Hong Kong District Council election, held on November 24, 2019, recorded the highest turnout in history at 71.2%. Hong Kong's Democrats won a majority of the 452 seats. As the one-year anniversary for the start of the protests against the now-scrapped Extradition Bill approaches, followed by the Hong Kong Legislative Council (LegCo) election in September, observers say that the CCP is worried about protesters in Hong Kong and thus introduced the national security law to extend its political control. Member of Taiwan's unicameral legislature, the Legislative Yuan, Wang Ting-yu, said he believes that the CCP's move to tear up the joint declaration enforced through its so-called national security law shows the CCP no longer has confidence in its political power in the city.
The CCP already have substantial control over the Legislative Council of Hong Kong. The Legislative Council's elections are not democratic elections. They are distorted, meaning that the majority of legislators within the Legislative Council are in Beijing government's hands. Yet it is still not at ease to the point that it is directly dealing with this national security law in the NPC.
The drafted bill empowers the NPC Standing Committee to enact relevant laws, mainly against the subversion of the CCP's state power, secession, terrorist activities, and foreign interference. The announcement did not provide further details, but indicated that the new law would give the CCP's central government the legal basis to directly impose disciplinary actions against large-scale anti-communist protests in Hong Kong.
If this national security law is passed by the National People's Congress, it will be tantamount to depriving the Hong Kong judiciary of its power. If judicial independence is taken away, the one country, two systems principle will cease to exist, and it will become one country, one system in essence. And as a result, Hong Kong will become the city of Hong Kong, no longer a special administrative region.
Hong Kong citizens staged a rally on Hong Kong Island on May 24th. Tam Tak Chi, vice chairman of People's Power, a Hong Kong pro-democracy political party, was present at the rally to show his opposition to Beijing's proposed law, but police arrested him on the spot, accusing him of unlawful assembly and other charges.
Peaceful assemblies are allowed by the Basic Law. Yesterday, May 24th, we marched out on Hong Kong Island, and on our way back, we saw there were also pro-establishment, pro-Beijing people protesting at the metro stations, asking people to sign in support of the national security law. So why didn't they get arrested? Tam Tae-chi got arrested right away as soon as he got there.
Nicole said that the rally began at 1 p.m. and that protesters filled the entire island.
We joined the march at the Hennessy Road. In less than a minute, the people in front began to move back. Many girls in their 15s or 16s said that tear gas were fired at the front. 6 tear gas canisters were fired.
She said that she saw water cannon trucks and armed vehicles passing by, and following the vehicles were 2 large buses filled with military police. She knew that the Hong Kong police had started arresting people, and it was even rumored that the police had opened fire.
I was not at the front. I heard they say someone was arrested and beaten, and people in front said that a shot was fired. But there was no media coverage on that shot, maybe because there was no press in the area. The press yesterday was too scattered because the area was too big, the range was too broad, and there were too many people.
As of 9 p.m. on May 24th, at least 180 people had been arrested on charges such as unlawful assembly and disorderly conduct in public places. Beijing's push for Hong Kong's national security law has drawn international criticism. More than 380 members from Hong Kong's 18 districts have also signed a joint petition asking Beijing to withdraw the proposed law. Meanwhile, a former speech against Hong Kong given by former Chinese Premier Zhu Rongji on November 19, 2002, has been circulating widely online.
If Hong Kong fails, not only will Hong Kong government officials be held responsible, but so will the Beijing central government. Hong Kong is reunited with its motherland. If it was ruined in our hands, wouldn't we become the sinners of this nation?
The Hong Kong national security law, proposed by the CCP at the Two Sessions Conference, has sparked an international outcry. Let's hear what Hong Kongers in the U.S. have to say. The Hong Kong national law will allow for regulations regarding subversion of state power, secession, terrorist activities, and interference by external forces. This means that some contents in Article 23 of the Basic Law will be directly inserted into Annex 3 and implemented in Hong Kong without being scrutinized by its Legislative Council, thus further reducing freedom of speech and freedom of assembly in Hong Kong.
This national security law is very harmful. Its aim isn't to just harm Hong Kong's rule of law. Not only has the one country, two system principle not been respected, but Hong Kong's entire culture will be in danger. Hong Kong has worked very hard over the past 100 years to build a system with a free economy and to build a place of democracy and freedom. As long as the Chinese communist regime still stands, it will gradually erode all democracy in the world.
This bill will basically destroy the one country, two systems principle and will turn it directly into one country, one system. After Hong Kong's most fundamental principle, one country, two systems, is destroyed, many foreign business owners, even friends and journalists, might feel frightened when they come to Hong Kong. In the future, Hong Kong's civilization and prosperity will go backwards. As you can see, the word most Googled by Hong Kongers is immigration.
Hong Kong's national security law should only be implemented from within Hong Kong through the Legislative Council rather than by China. Since the law was legislated by China's Two Sessions and then implemented by Hong Kong, it has already violated the relevant sections of Hong Kong's basic law. In fact, it has completely ignored the one country, two systems principle. This indicates that in Hong Kong, one country, two systems only exists in name, because Hong Kong no longer has its own legislative or executive base.
The Hong Kong national security law also requires the Hong Kong government to set up a national security agency in Hong Kong, and the chief executive of Hong Kong is also required to submit regular reports on national security to the central government.
So they might send in armed police from mainland to enforce the law. Or will it be that the national securities get sent to Hong Kong for law enforcement? There are a lot of legal problems with such law enforcement, as mainland China adopts mainland security law and Hong Kong adopts the basic law. Hong Kong people have rights and civil liberties, have the right to remain silent, the right to have fair and impartial hearings, and to have access to legal representation. For example, if you have been holding me for 48 hours, you will have to release me if you don't charge me with anything. However, those rights may all disappear because of national security problems. Nowadays, the world simply does not believe that the rule of law exists in mainland China, that there is justice in mainland China's legal system, or that there are rights for the people because over the past few decades, the CCP has shown the world that it is simply a system that undermines human rights and violates others' personal freedoms.
Previously, President Donald Trump said that the U.S. would respond very strongly if the CCP attempts to exert more control over Hong Kong. U.S. Department of State spokesperson Morgan Ortagus expressed on May 21st that the U.S. warns China against imposing new national security legislation on Hong Kong. Moreover, Foreign Secretary of the UK and Foreign Ministers of Australia and Canada issued a joint statement expressing their deep concern over the CCP's proposal to implement a national security law in Hong Kong.
On Thursday, May 28th, the Chinese regime passed the draft resolution on the national security law for Hong Kong. Now the U.S. is considering sanctioning China and revoking Hong Kong's preferential trading status.
The Chinese regime on May 28th passed a draft resolution on a national security law for Hong Kong, leading the United States to consider revoking Hong Kong's preferential trading status and sanctioning China. Experts believe that imposing tough sanctions on Chinese and Hong Kong officials involved in human rights abuses in the city can have a deterrent effect. The so-called national security law would ban acts and activities in connection to secession, subversion, and terrorism, as well as activities related to foreign interference. Moreover, Beijing security agencies would be allowed to set up operations in Hong Kong. White House National Security Advisor Robert C. O'Brien warned on May 24th that Washington will likely sanction the Chinese Communist Party if it pushes through the Hong Kong national security law, making Hong Kong lose its special status.
The real challenge is what are the tools that the United States can use in response to that, because a lot of what is available, including what's available in the Hong Kong Policy Act, really punishes the people of Hong Kong when you really want cost imposition to hit the CCP and Beijing.
Shriver stated recently that if the special trade status of Hong Kong is removed, it will hurt the interests of the Hong Kong people and American companies in the city. How to sanction the CCP in a targeted manner is the focus of discussions within the U.S. government. Yang Jian Li, the founder of Citizen Power, said that the United States received unanimous support from Hong Kongers when the Trump administration passed the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act last year. Hong Kongers are willing to make sacrifices to preserve their freedom.
For Hong Kong people, they may also suffer certain economic difficulties. But Hong Kong people have made a decision that they are willing to make such sacrifices to stop the Chinese government from continually undermining freedom in Hong Kong, which will eventually turn Hong Kong into another Shanghai.
Yang said that the pandemic and U.S.-China relations have undermined Hong Kong's status as a financial, trade, and investment center, but the impact of sanctions on Hong Kong people has weakened. In addition, based on the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, the United States can specifically target Chinese and Hong Kong officials and hold them responsible for violations of human rights in Hong Kong.
This kind of punishment on individual officials will have a certain deterrent effect. If Beijing gets its own way, then the United States will definitely come up with a list of people to be punished before the end of the year.
Now the United States is closely following the CCP's actions against Hong Kong during the two sessions, an annual meeting of the China's rubber stamp legislature, National People Congress, NPC, and its advisory body to enact policies and agendas. Experts believe the United States have the upper hand in terms of sanctioning the CCP.
Some clips from a classic Hong Kong movie in 1990 have recently been circulating online. These clips accurately predicted today's Hong Kong, such as protesters brutally beaten by the police and the large police force using tear gas to disperse crowds. A line from the movie, "One country, two systems" is over. Hong Kongers' fear has become a reality now.
When Hong Kong reverted to Chinese rule in 1997, the regime agreed to grant the city autonomy and freedoms not enjoyed in the mainland under this framework. But now, the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, plans to impose a national security law on Hong Kong, bypassing the city's legislature. This would end the basic law of Hong Kong. One country, two systems may become one country, one system at any time. Recently, some clips and slogans from classic Hong Kong films have been circulating on the internet. clips of the Hong Kong police force using tear gas to disperse a crowd and brutally beating protesters, and the slogan of "One country, two systems, it's over," were popular images that Hong Kongers feared could come true, but they have already materialized. In the movie 10 Years, one scene showed the protagonist, who supported Hong Kong independence, being pushed to the ground and beaten by anti-riot police as they fired tear gas into the air to disperse the crowd. The movie contains 5 short stories set in the year 2025, showing a dystopian future of a Hong Kong society losing its rights and freedoms as Chinese authorities exert their influence. That is now happening in Hong Kong.
At the time, the photographer asked if it was necessary to portray the policemen as bad guys because there were actually some good policemen, and if it was possible to ask the actors to not hit the people so hard. I was very careful not to go so far as to describe and portray the action of police hitting people on the head. But going into 2019, in just 4 years, police brutality has become a routine, and I think it's even worse than the movie.
While the scenes of the movie played out in real life, the director's heart felt heavy because the CCP continues to tighten its grip on the city.
At that time, the Chinese regime government intended to pass Article 23, and everyone felt that their freedom was restricted. I felt as if there was something after the legislation that I wanted to say, but I could not say it.
你知佢老人家啦，脾氣好差嘅，一到令下使啲弟子兵開過嚟啊！哼！到時聯合聲明完啦，一國兩制完啦，基本法完啦，到時港幣大跌，金融大跌，股市大跌，樓價大跌，跌跌跌跌跌。
The Hong Kong film Her Fatal Ways was released in 1990, a year after the June 4th Tiananmen Square massacre took place in Beijing. When the CCP announced that it would impose a national security law on Hong Kong, the city's stocks plunged, with the Hang Seng Index plunging 1,349.89 points, or 5.56%, on May 22nd. The legislation would jeopardize Hong Kong's status as a global financial hub. All the series of events from the movie accurately predicted what is currently happening in Hong Kong.
好，这个好。这个不是说短期不变，是长期不变。这个道理我过去讲了多少次？对，就算说50年不变了，50年之后更没变的道理。
What Deng Xiaoping said in those days is particularly ironic now. Netizens expressed that the Chinese communist regime has failed its promises. Words in black ink on white papers cannot be believed. Can we still believe in what the Chinese Communist Party says?
Joshua Philipp is an award-winning investigative reporter with the Epoch Times and host of Crossroads. He has over a decade of experience investigating the Chinese Communist Party, subversion, and related topics, giving him a unique insight into the threat posed by the CCP and the overall global political landscape. Joshua, thank you so much for joining me.
It's a real pleasure being on.
Okay, so recently there have been protests in Hong Kong regarding the national security law passed by the Chinese regime. What is the purpose behind the CCP's new national security law on Hong Kong?
So the Chinese Communist Party passed these new national security laws on Hong Kong, which are going to essentially end the one country, two systems policy. This is the Chinese Communist Party undermining the autonomy of Hong Kong by extending their laws, the laws of the mainland under the Chinese regime, into Hong Kong, which under the previous agreements it was not supposed to be doing.
I see. So can you elaborate a little bit more on what it means for Hong Kong to live under one country, two systems versus to what it's now, the one country, one system?
When Hong Kong was handed over to the Chinese mainland from Britain, because it used to be a British colony, part of the agreement would be that Hong Kong would maintain the same basic rights, basic freedoms, and basic structures of government that they had while living under the UK, under Britain. And that means that they have protections on basic rights, they have protections on free speech. They have a lot of the same protections that we in the West enjoy. Under the Chinese Communist Party, they do not have those protections. They do not have freedom of speech. They do not have freedom of assembly. They do not have freedom of press. They don't have freedom of religion. And so the Chinese Communist Party extending its laws into Hong Kong means that the one country, two systems policy is over. It means that the freedoms that Hong Kong once enjoyed very likely could be over. Because if the Chinese regime begins enforcing its own laws in Hong Kong, that is the end of freedom in Hong Kong.
Right. Recently, President Trump made an announcement saying that he will sanction some politicians from Hong Kong who approve of this new law, and also of those in Beijing who passed the law as well. What are some of the things that you think President Trump can do to further help Hong Kong's situation and in order to regain its autonomy?
Well, I think the sanctions being taken against these different officials, these Chinese Communist Party officials, when it comes to this issue is important, because it demonstrates, it sends a message that if you violate human rights, then not only will your country be punished, not only will you be sanctioned as a country, like the United States has been doing against China, but you as an individual can face retribution for that. You as an individual will have to face the weight of the global, say, legal system for doing that, that you will be held accountable for following through with the orders of a totalitarian and abusive regime. And so Trump is sending that message to the different Chinese Communist Party leaders, that very much like the Nazis after World War II, where they were held accountable for their human rights abuses and for their actions, he's sending the same message to these Chinese Communist Party officials, that if you follow the orders of the Communist Party, and if those orders mean abusing human rights, if they mean undermining basic rights, you will be held accountable for that. And I think that's a very powerful message to be sending right now.
Definitely, I agree.
This week, China unilaterally imposed control over Hong Kong's security. This was a plain violation of Beijing's treaty obligations with the United Kingdom in the Declaration of 1984 and explicit provisions of Hong Kong's basic law. It has 27 years to go. The Chinese government's move against Hong Kong is the latest in a series of measures that are diminishing the city's long-standing and very proud status. This is a tragedy for the people of Hong Kong, the people of China, and indeed the people of the world. China claims it is protecting national security. But the truth is that Hong Kong was secure and prosperous as a free society. Beijing's decision reverses all of that. It extends the reach of China's invasive state security apparatus into what was formerly a bastion of liberty. China's latest incursion, along with other recent developments that degraded the territory's freedoms, makes clear that Hong Kong is no longer sufficiently autonomous to warrant the special treatment that we have afforded the territory since the handover. China has replaced its promised formula of one country, two systems with one country, one system. Therefore, I am directing my administration to begin the process of eliminating policy exemptions that give Hong Kong different and special treatment. My announcement today will affect the full range of agreements we have with Hong Kong, from our extradition treaty to our export controls on dual-use technologies and more, with few exceptions. We will be revising the State Department's travel advisory for Hong Kong to reflect the increased danger of surveillance and punishment by the Chinese state security apparatus. We will take action to revoke Hong Kong's preferential treatment as a separate customs and travel territory from the rest of China. The United States will also take necessary steps to sanction PRC and Hong Kong officials directly or indirectly involved in eroding Hong Kong's autonomy and just, if you take a look, absolutely smothering Hong Kong's freedom. Our actions will be strong. Our actions will be meaningful. More than 2 decades ago, on a rainy night in 1997, British soldiers lowered the Union flag and Chinese soldiers raised the Chinese flag in Hong Kong. The people of Hong Kong felt simultaneously proud of their Chinese heritage and their unique Hong Kong identity. The people of Hong Kong hoped that in the years and decades to come, China would increasingly come to resemble its most radiant and dynamic city. The rest of the world was electrified by a sense of optimism that Hong Kong was a glimpse into China's future, not that Hong Kong would grow into a reflection of China's past. In every decision, I will continue to proudly defend and protect the workers, families, and citizens of the United States of America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Joshua, thank you so much for that. It was very interesting. It was great having you on. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. To catch Joshua on Crossroads, please visit his YouTube channel linked below this video. The Chinese Communist Party's cover-up led to a pandemic that now threatens the lives of people around the globe. With over 5.8 million people infected, China is still defensive about independent international inquiry into the origin and spread of the CCP virus. The Epoch Times has initiated a global Sign the Petition campaign, calling for investigating, condemning, and rejecting the CCP. We believe that investigating and exposing the truth is the only way that we can remain safe. Let's take action. Sign the petition at ccpvirustruth.com. That's all for today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this program with friends and family to keep them informed about the latest news and updates. Thank you for joining me. See you next time.